WWH show. This is a show that asks a series of why, what, and how questions on topics that have national, regional, and global significance and implications. Today we have such a topic to talk about: why leaders operating in isolation is counterproductive. To discuss this important topic, I have a privilege to discuss with Dr. Ray Charles.
Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thank you for coming. I know you are a member of Vistage, which has more than 18,000 CEOs as member, and also recently you are planning to launch your own Vistage in the DC Baltimore metro area.
Absolutely, and very excited about it. Very excited about it. Vistage has been around for 60 years. And
that's huge.
18,000 going on 19,000 members all across the world. 19 countries.
Where is the headquarters of Vistage?
San Diego.
San Diego.
San Diego. So I'm very excited about it.
So today's topic is about leaders operating in isolation, and this is a counterproductive approach to follow for senior leaders.
Sure.
There are many senior community leaders, business leaders, political leaders, and so on and so forth. And the first question we should ask about is, why should we care about leaders operating in isolation? Why we should care about leaders being lonely?
Sure. You know, Dr. Assegid, the basic metric of leadership is followership. The size of your followership is a measure of your leadership. So if you're defining yourself as a CEO, you're defining yourself as a pastor, or whatever leadership title, and you look back and there's no one following you, then
you're not a leader.
That's questionable. So when you operate in isolation, that goes totally against the whole concept of leadership.
How do you make of people's comment who says that one of the prices of leadership is loneliness?
That's true to a certain degree. And I would just change the word loneliness to being alone. And I'll share what I mean by that in a second. You see, there is leader development, and then there is leadership development. Oftentimes when you go to the bookstore and you see books on leadership, well, 95% of those books are really talking about leader development. These are things that you do alone, where you do some introspection. Am I humble enough? Do I have the right leadership trait? The leadership
character.
Do I have character? These are things that you do alone in your quiet time. But leadership development is all about enrolling. It's all about engaging your stakeholders for the fulfillment of a common goal. So you cannot execute leadership in a place of loneliness or being alone. So I think that distinction has to be made, because, and I've done a study on this, a lot of the books in the bookstore that says leadership is really talking about leader development.
So I know, some leadership experts, they argue that when you are at the top, you are lonely, and it feels like you are alone. But obviously, some leadership experts like Dr. John Maxwell, he argues that that's not the best way to be a leader, to be on the top and lonely, because some of the arguments people make it that if you are very close to your people, they may not respect you, they may undermine you, or they may not see the difference between themselves and you. So you want to always keep the distance so that you better lead them and successfully takes them somewhere.
Yes.
Is that argument holds any water?
I disagree. And I have a lot of respect for Dr. Maxwell. But this is where I disagree. I believe that you wholeheartedly, as a leader, ought to be touchable, ought to be close to your employees, ought to share some of your vulnerabilities, ought to share some of the areas that you aren't knowledgeable in. So what that does, it makes you human. There's a principle in management called the RACI principle. That's RACI, where R stands for what are the roles for your flock? What are the roles for your tribe? The A is who is accountable. The C is who should be consulted. And the I is who should be informed on a particular issue. Well, if you as a leader want to stay back and have a distance and feel like you have to have all the answers on a particular issue, you're really cutting yourself short on the potential and the creativity within your organization, because there's some folks that may want to step up to the plate and say, you know what, I'll be responsible, or I'll be accountable. So just applying, and there are lots of models, but I like the RACI model because it allows you to say, you know what, I need someone here to help me turn this computer on.
Yeah.
So just being human, and you being human introduces humanization into the organization.
I like that. By the way, maybe I misled you, because Dr. John C. Maxwell, he agrees with you. He says that you have to be closer to your people.
Gotcha.
And you should not be afraid of being closer to your people. He disagrees with leaders who are thinking that being alone or being separate from their people is important for them to lead effectively. But there may be some occasions where you may need to be alone.
Yes.
In the past, we have seen leaders finding themselves in a very hard place where there maybe their voters against them, their advisors maybe against them. Go back and see in history, for example, you'll find some great leaders left behind, forsaken or even rejected by their followers and their people. So in these kind of situations, I think you need to stand for the thing that you believe and be ready to die for that something that you have believed, even if people are not following you, even if you are left alone.
Exactly. And I agree wholeheartedly. One of my sayings is, as a leader, oftentimes you're the go-to person. Your stakeholders are going to you. Your employees are going to you. Your vendors are going to you. Your peers may be going to you. But who does the go-to person go to?
Interesting.
In their time of need. So I agree 100% that there are situations where you need to be alone, but at the same time, you also need to find that safe space where you can vet this FUD, if you will. And I'm sure you're familiar with FUD, that acronym: fear, uncertainty, and doubt. It's all going through your mind, and you don't necessarily want to share that fear, that uncertainty, and doubt
to the people you lead.
To the people you lead.
Maybe you need to shield them or protect them from that kind of.
And that's leadership.
Feelings.
And that's leadership. So you find that safe landing space, that safe environment where you can share. Sometimes it may come with a mentor one-on-one. It may come with a business coach, or sometimes it may come with a peer advisory group.
But even those leaders who are facing difficult times and alone, they should find ways to go to their peers or people who may support them, help them, and pass through that challenge. They don't need to really be alone.
No, they don't. And a lot of times they don't engage in those types of environments simply because they don't know it exists. It's not that they don't want to. So I see almost like a movement. I see a movement of peer-to-peer advisory, leadership advisory groups that are rising all across the globe, where peers can take off their mask, if you will, take off that Superman cape, if you will, and just be totally vulnerable. One of the greatest fears, Dr. Assegid, of a leader is not wanting to share with their direct reports that, you know what, I really don't know what I'm doing. So
that's humility.
That's it. It's humility.
And people appreciate that. Your people appreciate that. They don't consider you as dumb because they know you reach that level because you are intelligent. You reach that level because you are smart, wise. They know that. So if once in a while, when you face something that you don't know or something that you can't handle alone, what's the big deal if you tell to your people that you don't know or you need their help?
Sure. It's that lack of knowledge, if you will, on the execution of a task or a tactic. But when it comes to a strategy, if you want to roll out a certain bonus structure and you're not sure whether you want to roll it out via top line or bottom line profits, these are some things that you may not necessarily want to share with your employees. You may want to vet this with a peer who have gone down that path before. But as it pertains to tactics on executing a task, you know what? I don't really know how to operate this machine. Is there someone at our team can show me how to do this? As a CEO, that humility,
exactly,
I believe, should be brought forth.
Because nobody is perfect. Nobody could be able to do everything by himself or herself.
Absolutely.
Finding people who can, back up our weaknesses, find people who could be able to complement is one of the key skills of leadership.
Absolutely.
By the way, I just want to know what are some of the reasons or why leaders prefer to operate alone. Let's see some of the reasons. Why, some people who are, some leaders who are operating in isolation. Why do you think they should operate in isolation? Are there any justifiable reasons?
Yeah, there are lots, but I'll list about three. And if we can just picture for a second a triangle where the base is vision, then the second segment is differentiation, and the third level is revenue. A leader who has that vision for the company and is looking at what I want and what I got, and there's a gap there between I want and I got, that's probably the location of the greatest pain, because it's the vision that gives birth to this company. And so that feeling of failure tries to come in and set in. Then when you elevate from the vision, the differentiation, the whole reason you started this company is to have that unique selling proposition, to be unique from your competitors, but you find yourself in a place where you're not unique. And again, that feeling of failure tries to come in. And the one that we all talked about, the one that we all see on the newspaper, the one that we all hear on the Wall Street Journal, etc., is the revenue. But I see that as more surface. The core reason that I believe leaders go into isolation is when they look at that delta between what I want and what I got in terms of my vision. And so it's a little hard to share that delta from a vision casting perspective with your employees. Because guess what? The whole reason that they are employees is that they have bought into the vision during the interviewing process. So having that safe space again as a CEO to share with your peers and say, you know what? I started this company. This was my vision. This is what I wanted. But this is what I got here. I need help. That's a reason why you may not necessarily want to share that within the confines of the company, but to find that safe space to share that.
I would like to share one data from Harvard Business Review, which was posted on its website. It says that half of CEOs report experiencing feelings of loneliness in their role. And of this group, 61% believe it hinders their performance. First-time CEOs are particularly susceptible to this isolation. Nearly 70% of first-time CEOs who experience loneliness report that the feelings negatively affect their performance. It's a huge data. Half of the CEOs feel that they feel lonely, especially the first-time CEOs, the first-time top executives. They feel more lonely compared to experienced CEOs. So having that kind of, high caliber position of leadership brings that kind of price into their life. And it is common in the world that top leaders are experiencing loneliness.
If you recall what we discussed at the very beginning of our show, the difference between leader development and leadership development. If our CEOs can just grab a hold, first of all, that there is a difference. The leader development is where you build up those leadership traits within you as an individual leader. Once you grab a hold of the concept of leadership, which really has its root in stakeholder engagement, not just delegating, but collaborating. There is a saying, Ubuntu, I am because you are. That, in my estimation, epitomizes leadership. The reason, and I've coached a number of CEOs, the reason they tend to go into that place of loneliness is because they believe that they are responsible for the execution of that initiative. I've heard it time and time again on a one-on-one and in groups.
So rather than collaborating, they feel that this is their responsibility.
If
it fails, it backfires on them, it reflects on them, and so on and so forth.
Right. And again, if we go back to the Rocky model, we're not going to go through the whole thing. I'm just going to look at two letters, the R and the A. The R is responsible. The A is accountable. If we make that shift from responsible to accountable, now you then, your vision is now spread much wider to identify who are my allies, who are my stakeholders, who can I surround. You see, I want to surround myself with a lot of folks that are a lot smarter than I am, that can accentuate my places of weakness. But if you believe that you are responsible for the execution and the success of this particular initiative, then it narrows your perspective.
And leads you to loneliness.
And it leads to loneliness. So therein lies loneliness is the symptom. You see, we talk a lot of, the paper talks about the symptom, doesn't talk about the root.
Root cause, yeah.
The root cause, number one, is a lack of distinction between leader development and leadership development. The root cause is a distinction between being responsible and being accountable.
What about other types of leaders? For example, yes, I understand that because of the lack of this understanding, some leaders may find themselves lonely. But what about some leaders thinking that, okay, if I open up, if I bring people closer to me, they may know the secret of the trade, they know what I know, and then I will become irrelevant. So it's better if I isolate myself away. And also, some leaders may think, hey, if I fellowship with others, of course, if a leader is smarter, that's how he does. Like you said, I bring people who are smarter than I am. But for some people, bringing smarter people closer to them may mean that they compete with them. And they don't have maybe the confidence, the security that they can't really compete with this kind of smart people. So what about this kind of leaders who think that bringing people closer to them makes them vulnerable, makes them less competitive?
There's a great book out there. It's called Blue Ocean Strategy. One and it talks about the red ocean and the blue ocean. And without going into too much detail because our time is limited, the red ocean looks at someone as a competitor, and I have to hide and I have to protect myself. I think that's what you're referring to, that type of leader.
I have to hide, I have to be alone.
Yeah.
I should not share my secrets. I should not share my competitive advantage, because if people know about them, then I will become irrelevant. Of course, this is faulty. I don't believe in that kind of approach.
Sure. The blue ocean perspective says, okay, I do have my trade secrets patented or copywritten. Why not share? And that, what about the possibility of that being a competitive advantage? Maybe that opens a door for Ubuntu. Maybe that opens a door for collaboration. There's in the 80s, there was a word that came out in the business world called co-optation. It's a clip between collaboration and competition. I think co-opetition is more of the other mindset, where it's more of a possibility mindset. The protecting and guarding yourself against being hurt by a potential competitor, in my estimation, is a limited mindset. Now, you notice I said, once you have your trademark, you have to do your risk management. You have to protect yourself. But once you've done that, why not share it? Why not share it? Because at the end of the day, it's beyond our company. It's our environment. It's the investment. My mantra is keep investing in people. Don't just keep investing in your employees. Keep investing in people. Invest in your employees. Invest in your community. And maybe that neighbor in business that is a quote unquote competitor, they may partner, which is another synonym for the collaboration, which is of the same family of Ubuntu. See, that's a whole nother mindset. And we sort of have to break out of that, because that is more in line with what leadership development. I keep coming back to that. That whole partnership, that whole cooperation, that whole collaboration is more in line with leadership stakeholder engagement paradigm versus leader development paradigm. Leader development says I have to protect myself. So it's very limited.
Yeah, by the way, I believe that when somebody protects himself from other people, protects his ideas, inventions, and so on, yes, in a certain degree, yes, that's very important. You have to register your patent, you have to keep your trademark, and so on. But protecting your message, protecting your comparative advantage is a disadvantage, and it's a disservice to you, to your organization. Think about it. For example, I may protect myself. Let's say I'm a seed. I protect myself. Yes, I can remain there as one seed.
Yes.
But think about it. If I sow myself, if I die,
come on,
I can reproduce thousands of other seeds. Yes. I can be one tree, protect myself, or release my seeds and become a forest. So this is a choice. For me, if people, when they release themselves, when they sow themselves into other people, into their communities, into their organizations, by becoming selfless, for me, they are doing a service to themselves and a service to their organization. They can take themselves to the next high. They can explode and reach the world when they share. But if they become, self is a universal law. You can't really become something significant. You can't leave legacy. You can't impact beyond yourself if you keep and protect yourself and remain alone.
There's I believe this is a Chinese proverb. It says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
I like that. Say it again.
If you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And that's what we're talking about. And Dr. Assegid, that concept, that paradigm, that mindset, if you will, is so relatively new because our MBA classes, our business books segment of the bookstore, it's all filled with leader development strategies. And very few, I would say less than 2% of the books are focused on leadership development, engaging, enrolling, collaborating, partnering. You know, the Constitution of the United States, it starts with we the people, right? We the people. So it has to be about the people. It cannot be about your political, protecting yourself from your political party's initiative. It has to be about the people. Am I making sense?
Oh, yeah. I mean, let's move on and talk about, for example, why operating in isolation is counterproductive. Let's convince people. Maybe some people, they already believe in what we are talking about. Some people are in the middle, maybe. Some people may not believe at all. So let's try to talk about how it is counterproductive so that some of the people who are in the middle may make a shift and join the movement, as you say, the movement of working together, collaborating, especially in the 21st century, which is a globalized world, networked by the internet, and no more you can isolate yourself and think that you won't be impacted by what happens in the other corner of the world, because no more you compete with people around you in your village, in your town. Now you're competing with people around the world. So if you isolate yourself, if you don't find ways to find collaboration, partnership with other people, not even with people like you, I mean people from diverse cultures, you are in a very disadvantaged position.
I'll share a quick story with you.
Okay.
I discovered, about a year ago, that my great-grandfather was 100% Chinese.
Phew.
Now, you look at me,
Yeah.
you wouldn't be able to guess that.
No. Unless you tell me like that.
Unless I told you on television, along with millions of folks that are watching. But I share that with the owner of my favorite restaurant, Chinese restaurant. And the moment I shared that with him, there was such a connection. Whenever I go in, he's like, "How you doing? How's my family?" We not only connect, but now we're clicking. Because I've now shared, I didn't protect that. I could have. Yeah. I had a choice. Yeah. I shared that with...
Look at what you got.
And the return, the ROI, not only the ROI, the ROR, return on relationship. See, in business,
only ROI.
See, that's good. That's good. ROI is of the paradigm of protecting. I have to protect my to compete, to win, to have that ROI. But when we think in terms of ROR, return on relationship, that's more of the paradigm of sharing. And what it does, it just now my network, my family tree, if you will, has suddenly expanded.
That's an advantage.
Exactly.
Something that makes you happy, that makes you alive, because knowing that there are other people out there who relate and resonate with you.
So let me get back to your original question. Why is it counterproductive?
Yeah.
There's a saying that your net worth is only as strong as your network.
Say it again. That's very powerful.
Your net worth, asset minus liabilities, your net worth is only as strong as your network. So
the narrower it is, the lesser net worth you have.
And I submit to you, Dr. Assegid, your network is a direct correlation, a direct function of leadership. development, not leader development. Leader development keeps me built up, built me strong, built my ego.
When the opportunity comes, maybe you're ready, but if you don't develop your leadership,
I may get an invitation to speak,
but you may not capitalize on it because you don't have leadership development.
And I don't have the network. Exactly. So your net worth is only as strong as your network. That's why it's counterproductive.
So we should not embrace this kind of loneliness in leadership. I know many leaders in my community, political leaders, top leaders. Some of them, they die. Some of them are in exile and so on. And one of the reasons is because they don't have a network of support of successors. They have been always afraid of the people next to them, the people they may think may succeed them. They spend their time in killing, jailing, and destroying the people who could have helped them create a network of safety net, a network of support for them. So I see that in some leaders still who are alive, who are not trying to open up themselves, not developing their successors, not bringing people around them, support them. They believe that they are unique. That's good. Everybody is unique, but
that's leader development.
Exactly. Yeah, it's unique. But your comparative advantage and competitive advantage is when you believe that you're not whole until you bring people who are unique like you. When you embrace that thought, you respect people. You bring people and you know that you can't really succeed and maximize your potential without bringing people who complement in the area where you don't have strengths. Nobody is 100% perfect.
Yes.
I mean, you don't have strengths, all strengths. There are also weaknesses. There are some limitations. How can you overcome that? That's why sometimes if you don't have that kind of network, what happens? You are blindsided sometimes. And you may destroy your destiny, your organization, and your nation. But if you have a network of people, leaders like you, so you should not be intimidated by that kind of people. You should not bring people who are yes people. You should not always bring, remember Abraham Lincoln, he brought in his cabinet people who oppose him. Think about Obama. He brought some of his rivals, like Hillary Clinton, as his one of his cabinet members.
Classic example of leadership development. Classic example. Dr. Assegid, one of the most powerful quotes that I've heard in 2014 was this, is that the greatest gift that you can give the world as a leader is your mentee. The greatest gift. So if you are considering yourself as a great leader, but you are not simultaneously developing a mentee, then your leadership has really failed. Because leadership is not one-dimensional. Leadership is multi-generational.
I like that. It's multi-generational.
I need to write that down.
Yeah.
That's good.
Powerful.
Leadership is multi-generational. It's not uni-generational. And we have far too many leaders that have viewed leadership as uni-generational.
And their vision, their work, their legacy dies with them.
It dies with them.
There is no sad situation like that. You
dies
die and you're over. People, the next generation is not talking about you. The thing that you have done, the thing that you said is not quoted by your next generation. That's one of the piteous things somebody will embrace and spend the rest of their life.
Now, I want to add to what we just shared, because a lot of these leaders whose legacy may have died with them is not because of choice, but it could be because their only paradigm that had been fed to them was leader development. You see, there has to be a transition. There has to be a shift from leader development to leadership development. First, understanding what it is, then executing it to perfection. And I believe once folks understand what it's a lot less stressful to execute leadership development, because that's based on leverage, that's based on network, than try to execute leader development.
Now, we have to clarify one thing.
Yes.
I think, some leaders may think that, hey, I'm not alone. I'm not lonely. I have friends, I have assistants, and so on. So what kind of loneliness are we talking about here? Because having assistants, having friends and colleagues who may not challenge you, who may not have that, toe-to-toe
Sure.
Development, leadership development with you, you may be still alone.
Very good question. First of all, we are not talking about physical loneliness. We're talking about loneliness from a belief system. And first of all, loneliness is an emotion. So if you believe that you are lonely, if you believe that you are the only one going through this, if you believe that there is no one that you can share this delta with, the I got delta in terms of my vision, then it leads to that emotion of loneliness. So so you can be physically around your peers of CEOs, your peers in the C-suite, your peers of business owners. You can be golfing at the country clubs 5 days a week and still get to your quiet place at night. When you reach at home in your quiet place, and that thought locks in, thinking, wow, I'm alone on this issue. It starts with a belief. And that could be a fact. But why not take it to your peers or a group of folks that you trust and that you can share that with and say, look, I need you to help me unpack this. Because quite frankly, this is hindering my leadership. That opens the door to eradicate that belief, that thought of being alone. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
So let's talk about if there are some legitimate reasons, forces that may enforce leaders to be lonely or alone. Are there? Because I just don't want to throw out there and tell people that you have to be always networked, collaborating, and so on. But are there any legitimate reasons why leaders sometimes should be alone?
Absolutely.
Can you give us some examples?
Absolutely. When you are in the, and this is a great reason, when you are in the embryonic phase
Okay.
of transitioning your company, you want to be so attuned to your purpose. There's a great book out there. I'm sure the whole world has heard of it, Purpose Driven Life. You want to be in a place of being alone, not so much loneliness, but you want to be separated from the noise. Because there's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of, the internet is filled with, it's filled with information, yes, but at the end of the day, it's a lot of noise. So you want to isolate. You want to talk about a legitimate reason to isolate is when that baby, because at the end it's a pregnancy, and when you think of a normal pregnancy, when your mate is pregnant, you want to keep her away from the pollutants.
You should not eat something, you should not exercise vigorously, otherwise you're going to abort it. Likewise, leaders should know that when they are pregnant with their vision,
yes,
they should make sure that sometimes they have to isolate themselves, protect themselves from losing their vision,
yes,
losing their babies.
Yes, and this is not limited to entrepreneurs. This is not limited to business owners. This could be someone, I know I'm speaking to someone that you may just have been laid off from your job. It's not the end of the world. It's just reset to another phase. In that phase of being laid off, you want to be separated and go through a whole introspection and assessment. So again, you want to get that seed for the transition. Oh, that's good. The seed for the transition. That's a period in time where you need to be separated and isolated, just for a season, so that you can have that germination of that seed can come to maturity.
Yeah, because that's very important, at the early stage of your visioning, and also while you are transitioning. I like that because, these are very difficult times. Think about it. You just sow your seed and it's not coming out, germinating. It may take, let's say, weeks. So if at that moment you have to be patient.
You have to.
Until, it breaks through the soil.
Yes.
And, shoot out. The same way your vision, it's inside of you. It's already germinating, it's already developing, but you couldn't be able to see the fruits yet. You have to be patient, isolate yourself, because some people may talk you out.
Yes.
Saying that, hey, you were talking about this vision, you were talking about this business, talking about achieving this, going there and so on, but we don't see anything. Just to stop your dream and let's go together to another direction where you should not go. In transition too, the same.
Yes.
While you are in transition, people may talk you out to take the right route, because you may take a very wrong route which may be a dead end. So you have to be quiet at that time, isolate from the noises around you. Some of these noises could be people very close to you.
Yes.
So you have to select people you want to listen during that time.
Exactly. You used the D word a few seconds ago. I want to go back to that, dream. You want to give yourself time to dream. Doc, there are different types of dreamers out there. And I believe what I'm about to say speaks directly to your question. Your question is to the audience, what's the legitimate reason to operate in isolation as a leader? Well, here are the different types of dreamers. Ultimately, you want to be a dream maker. I'll come back to that. But you don't want to be a dream baker. You constantly put in a new bake in the oven. You're not given time. You're not the patience, not having that patience. That's because you haven't given your time to be quiet and isolate yourself to get the full understanding of that dream. That takes some isolation. So there's dream makers, there's dream bakers, there's dream fakers. The whole concept of fake it till you make it. Mm-hmm. And even dream fakers, they don't give themselves enough time, because once they have the thought of it, they go out and run with it with the mindset of fake it till you make it. So there's dream makers, dream bakers, dream fakers. They're dream takers. You get the thought, you don't quiet down to assimilate that thought, but then you go and share it with someone, and they put doubt in your heart, and they take it away from you. Dream makers, dream bakers, dream fakers, dream takers. But there's one last one. Dream undertakers. Who are they? Dream undertakers are those who bury their dream with them. They are dream undertakers. They are those, like I've shared with you, whose legacy died with them. They never took the time to mentor someone who can then take it to another level. So we just shared 5 different types of dreamers. And the only one...
And also I challenge our audience to identify where they are.
Exactly.
And also differentiate people who they are based on these 5 types of dreamers.
The only one that will bring forth a full birth is dream makers. And that requires the conception of the seed, the germination. It takes time. That's the understanding, the wisdom welling up, the strategy, having that notepad at your bed, not sharing it with the world yet, gaining full understanding. That's all during isolation. And then the execution. Did those help, Doc? Those five types of dreamers.
Yeah, it's very powerful. But let's say, people, they may not be convinced that they should find a way to collaborate with other leaders. Mm-hmm. What are the side effects? What kind of prices they're going to pay if they don't avoid operating in isolation?
The impact.
Individually, organizationally, what are the side effects, consequences of operating in isolation?
There are three. There are three key ones. I'm sure there are lots. And it's the acronym HER, H-E-R. H stands for the hourly impact. By operating in isolation, it's going to take you a whole lot longer to execute a task that if you can identify a few allies, that can be executed in a much shorter period of time. So there's an hourly impact of operating in isolation. The E in HER, H-E-R. The E is that there's an emotional impact. That feeling of isolation can be even developed further into doubt, into depression. I mean, it goes on and on, and feeling like a failure. So all of those words that I'm describing, these are all emotional words. So there's an emotional impact. And the last one, the R, is revenue. There's a revenue impact. Just one word from sharing your, not failure, but setback. Just sharing your ideas, sharing your opportunity, doing a mini SWOT analysis with a colleague can give you that aha moment and give you that acceleration, which you can then call your board or your direct reports or your senior executives and say, guys, I got a solution. I have a strategy. You wouldn't be able to run with that if you operate in isolation. So there's a revenue impact, there's an emotional impact, and there's an hourly impact.
So the impacts are at individual level and organizational level. So organizations should take time and identify and help leaders who are lonely. Because that's a setback to the organization. Because think about it, that leader has been operating in isolation. Let's say if he dies because of accident or health issue and so on, his knowledge, his experience, everything dies with him. Let's say that your organization expands. You don't have people who can take some assignments and challenges because this leader has been operating in isolation, never developed people to take other challenging positions like he did. So considering the impacts at the organizational level, organizations should pay closer attention to those leaders who are lonely. They should find a way to give them incentives to operate in collaboration.
Just as we have a research and development line item and different line items in a budget, we ought to have a line item for personal development, personal and professional development. And that's why I'm so excited about companies like the company that I'm affiliated with, Vistage International, that opens that space for leaders to come together in a safe environment to unpack and receive an objective viewpoint from their peers about the particular issue prior to unrolling it in their particular organization, rolling it out within the organization.
So now we are talking about the solutions, the how. So how can leaders stop operating in isolations and start to collaborate and find people who can support them, nurture them, and also help them achieve what they dream?
You know, I want to go back to
what are some of the steps?
I want to go back to Rocky. The I is involved. Just get involved. sometimes the steps begins by serving, by being that servant leader, getting involved in your chamber of commerce, getting involved in different business organizations, getting involved, serving on a nonprofit board. The person that is sitting right next to you could very well be a solution and a resource for your company. But you don't go in there with the intent and the motive just to help me. Look at me, look at me. But you go in there with the intent to serve. It begins with service, not solution. It begins, that's why servant leadership, lots of books are out there on servant leadership. But again, those books on servant leadership just speaks to being a servant leader and not the execution of it.
Now let's talk about also the impacts and how to help individuals and organizations recover from that kind of impacts. I believe that if the leader, if they are watching right now and if they have been operating in isolations, definitely there are some impacts, some damage that have been already happening. So how can they recover from that kind of damage and start to recover and go to the right direction? Somebody's already in isolation, right?
Yeah. You know, this is something that's very dear to me. One of my clients, operated in isolation, and it turned out to be some pretty negative. He actually committed suicide. And this particular person was a go-to person. But again, who does the go-to person go to in their time of need? I believe the way out, the how, is to first be open that there are different dimensions of a leader. There's the business leader, but I also have a life, I have a family. So there's the emotional aspect of that leader. And just to be open to be led as a leader. So just seeking that help, whether it be through mentorship, whether it be through coaching. But I firmly believe, Dr. Assegid, the number one path is just to serve. The moment you start refocusing, changing the focus from yourself to offer that service to another organization or another child, or maybe starting a mentor-protege department within your business, that's a way of investing in people. And that investment produces a return, and it causes that deterioration of that whole isolated effect.
I haven't planned it, but I think we have to discuss something about, let's say, first, let me quote you one quotation from Middle East. It says, "Owe to leadership, for it buries those who possess it." Here is also William Shakespeare. He said, "Uneasy lies the head that wears a crown." So there is a challenge for leaders, and some leaders may find themselves in a very difficult position where they are kept alone. Let's talk about Nelson Mandela. When he was in jail, he was forced. He didn't have any choice. Now, he was forced, He didn't choose to be alone, but he was not lonely. He was not. Yeah, he found ways to find collaborators. As you said, he was serving while he was in jail. Yeah. There may be other leaders right now, maybe they are in jail, maybe they are in a very difficult situations. If you go to my country, there are great leaders. Some of them are my friends, like Andualem, he's an opposition leader. There are some journalists, they are in jail, forced to be alone, but they could be able to find ways not to be lonely. So Mandela, what he was doing, he was serving while he was in jail. He was writing letters to his family members, allies. He was also reading, writing, and also he had a group of freedom fighters who were mentoring him, who were talking to him, nurturing him. Think about it. He was alone. He was posed with information like the problem with his wife, the days of his child, his mother, and so on. Passing through those all difficult moments, he was not lonely. So it's possible for leaders, even if they are forced to be lonely, there is a way for them to remain alive by finding ways to find people who may support them, nurture them, and encourage them.
And if you recall the triangle that I shared earlier, the base of that triangle being vision, then the next segment is differentiation. The next level is revenue. These are the pain points, if you will, of a leader. The way that you can function alone and not lonely is that you have to fuel that vision. Sometimes it can be fueled just from reading a book. Sometimes it can be fueled just from serving. It's Mandela, President Mandela, may he rest in peace, he found ways to fuel. He found ways to fuel his vision just from establishing a garden, a vegetable garden.
He would have died prematurely. He wouldn't have stayed long enough to become the first black president of South Africa if he was lonely. So loneliness kills people, their creativity, and finally it affects their health, and that is a price they are paying themselves and their organization and their community and their nation.
But I also believe, Doc, a key component in answering directly to your question, how can you operate as a leader alone and circumvent and overcome the loneliness? See, loneliness is a time factor. I'm lonely for a period of time. You and I, we've experienced loneliness, but it didn't last.
Yep.
The way you defeat loneliness is that you have to operate in a place out of time.
Out of time.
Out of T-I-M-E, out of time. And what takes me out of the realm of time is purpose.
That keeps you alive.
That keeps me alive.
Survive that moment of that season of loneliness.
I have to feed that fuel. Even though the circumstances tells me that there's no way in the human that I can execute this, because allies are not coming my way to help me, to lift my hands to fulfill this. That can put me in a place of loneliness.
By the way, I like this because, in the past 2 decades, I have had, I believe, 4 loneliness situations.
Come on, talk about
seasons. In those seasons, if you ask me what helped me survive, what the purpose you're talking about, it took me out of the time.
It took you out of the time capsule.
Exactly, because if you are bound with time, and if you feel like you are helpless, and if you think that this loneliness is going to continue forever, you're wrong. Because it has its own time. When the time expires, you're free.
Yes.
If you use that loneliness time, because I made some transitions from one profession to another, from one organization to another, until I reached this level. I don't know, maybe in the future I may have a situation where I need to have a transition. So during those periods, what kept me alive is because I took myself out of time, stick my eyes, my vision onto something that I'm passionate about. That means my purpose, my mission in life. I knew that, that transition period gonna last. It may be 1 year, it could be 1 month, it could be 3 years. So if there are people, leaders who are maybe right now out of job, maybe called out, maybe in jail, or maybe sick, hey, this loneliness season will pass away. They have to have that purpose, that keeps them out of the rule of time. They become out of the control of time. That makes you alive while you are really in a situation where you are lonely.
Yes. In President Mandela, going back to his example, as he was developing his garden, and this is all documented. This is not Dr. Ray speak. Yeah. This is all documented. When he was interviewed, they asked him, why did you spend so much time developing this garden? His response was, it takes me out of the realm of time.
Wow. Repeat it.
It takes me out of the realm of time. So then the question is, what garden are we developing that can take us out of the realm of time? That garden could be a child. That garden could be an at-risk youth. That garden could be service. Garden is simply a metaphor. What garden, and Dr. Assegid, we've been talking for a while on this show, but I believe this is like the core of it. What garden are we developing? Is the garden just us? It got to go beyond us. What garden are we developing that can take us beyond the realm of time, still be alone, and slay that dragon of loneliness?
By the way, many of the successes that I have achieved, I'm not saying I'm successful yet because I'm on the learning curve, but the successes that I have achieved happened because of those loneliness seasons. Because during those seasons, I have written books. During those loneliness seasons, I served. During those loneliness seasons, I strategized. And many of the jumps, many of the successes that I have achieved happened because of those seasons. Because during those seasons, I was not lonely.
You found your garden.
Exactly.
You found your garden. You developed your garden. You nurtured your garden.
Exactly.
That's what you do.
Exactly.
During that period.
So that's what we encourage our audience. Dr. Ray, I really enjoyed our discussion. Thank you very much for coming.
This was great.
On behalf of ISAT and our audience, thank you very much for coming. We enjoyed this discussion. Dear our viewers, we have concluded this discussion about leaders not operating in isolation. It's very important. You may be lonely right now, but believe that you can use that opportunity to serve others, to maintain your sanity and come out from that loneliness. But you need to find people who can collaborate with you, support you, and help you while you are passing through your loneliness season. Thank you very much for watching.